Madness. That is why you're watching Spin Legal on a Wednesday night at 6:30. Okay, so welcome everybody to Spin Legal on November 6, 2024. 19? What am I talking about? 19. This is episode 41 with Angela and myself, and we are partners of Invictus Legal, and tonight our topic is going to be this one of 80% of legal problems are not being addressed through the legal system. There you go. Right. If you need to contact myself or Angela, you can do so on 905-688-5598. And Angela's email is angela@weareinvictus.legal. And mine is peter@weareinvictus.legal. And you can contact, you can get our website at https://weareinvictus.legal. There you go. Okay. So there we go. So here we have it, and I didn't take that and copy it. So let me do that right now and enter that into this as a question, and we're going to pop this right at the top of all my things, except for there. I'm going to save, show that, and put this on. So there we go. 80% of all legal problems are not being addressed in the legal system in Ontario. And we're going to explain some of the reasons in Canada, I mean. This is a Canadian poll, and that's the reason what we're discussing tonight, not specifically Ontario, Canada-wide. So there are a number of reasons why that, and we're going to discuss some of those reasons, including the fact that people can't afford legal advice.
Yeah. Right. Or it's like a big sticker shock. So it's up to the legal firms of trying to work and how to make their fees more affordable.
Well, talking about that, yeah. we just went through that a few minutes ago, right?
Yep.
And the person, so we said, okay, can you pay by installments? Oh yeah, we can do that. Right.
Yeah. They're okay about paying X number of dollars per month, and that's fine. We're okay with it as long as they do that. I mean, this is what we try to do. We try to build in people's legal fees into a structure, and some legal fees are flat rated structure where we know what's going to happen, what we need to do, and then they just know they're only going to pay X number of dollars, and that's it. Okay, done and done, right? Or they have. Some do the hourly system, but they kind of know where it's going and where it's going to end. But we tried not to go too much further. Like a lot of times you'll say, well, I don't want to pay more than X number of dollars on this case if you can keep it below that. So we try to work on that too. Okay? So there's a lot of ways that legal professionals try to fit in the person's legal problem and its resolution within a type of affordability framework for the people. Okay, then there's others who just say, okay, let's see how we work it. Okay, and you have to work. We're working with the public right now, okay, where people think lawyers are all billionaires for some reason. We're not.
It's a pity you and I are working. It's a pity that you and I work for less than minimum wage, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Most lawyers and paralegals, particularly those that are working alone or in a partnership, they don't really make a heck of a lot of money. They're not earning much more than what other people earn in terms of their jobs. Yeah. They're just self-employed, and they might have a bit more flexibility with their time and stuff. But I think we really have to look at also to accessing the services. Legal services are expensive to provide, because there's a lot of requirements that we have. And we have to meet these requirements in order to continue providing them.
And just to look at a couple of the expenses, while you're talking about expenses, right? So for a small firm like us that has 6 offices, those 6 offices cost us a lot of money, and we've been looking at potentially new places to rent, and the rentals for some of these offices are $4,000 to rent an office of the size of ours. Some are even higher. So there you go. And we're not talking about Toronto rents here. We're talking about staying in, staying in
Hicksville, Niagara region.
Yeah, exactly. We're not going anywhere fancy. We're staying in a reasonable location. Then you've got things like the cost, the cost of photocopying, the cost of printing, the cost of
document management,
computers, the cost of software that you use, etc., etc. All of this adds up. And we actually, before we were looking at the cost of prices being $3,500 to $4,000, we were talking about the cost of the other things being $3,500 to $4,000. Some of these.
And we've actually costed it out. Like, say, what if we had no office and had everybody work remotely? It's about the same cost, maybe more.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like, you cannot win for losing. Right?
So, and part of the problem, of course, which is perceived with legal stuff, and we'll go through this in a while, is actually about the cost of legal services. So at the moment, it's estimated that 5.4 million people, or 18% of all Canadians, have serious legal problems. And further, that 71% of those people with legal problems are not getting professional legal assistance. And that's a crucial couple of statistics there. All right?
When I get family members with legal problems, they always come to me, so they always get their legal assistance.
Well, I was going to say, of course, if you've got a small claims court matter where you're claiming, you are owed X by the by somebody you contracted to do a job, and you're just simply collecting a debt. Maybe you don't. If it's only $3,000 or $4,000, you probably wouldn't be value for money to go to a lawyer or a paralegal, because it would cost you more than that even to start an action. And those kind of cases, if you are logical about how you present your case to the court, there's no reason why any individual can't present their case to the court and get.
And we've done coaching.
They deserve.
We've done coaching for people who want to go it alone, but they really don't have the full confidence, don't know how to fill the forms correctly, don't know what forms to fill out, or need some help enforcing a claim, things like that. So those are things that we sometimes do too as well, for people who are what I call the lone wolves, who want to go out and handle most of the claim themselves. We've also helped them in that kind of.
Well, you were helping a gentleman a while ago where you were doing notaries for his all his filings. So he was notarizing all his filings and coming through the court. He was probably doing once a month. He hasn't been in for a while. So I'm guessing
he took his case all the way to the Supreme Court of Canada. Hey? And I'll tell you, this guy was doing this by himself. He was coming to us for certain things, like, what do I do next? Where do I send this? What do I do? Can I get this notarized? Can I get this commissioned? I just served this on this guy, whatever, And he just went all the way to the, oh my God. Give you services? Yes, funding would be a help to cut costs at a permanent office. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm not a fan of working remotely, because if we did work remotely, we would lose about a third of our clientele, 30 to 40% of our clientele, because not everybody has computers and not everybody's comfortable with using them to communicate. But yes, we do have, and we've thought through a lot of things when we did our what we call cost accounting. We do this every year, and then we put out what it would cost us to deliver services. So this is something that's very, very important if you're starting any business, not just a legal business. Even if you're selling clothes or you want to start an antique shop, you have to know how much it costs you to run your business. So you have to do that and have to know your costing analysis.
So we've been talking about the fact that 80% of problems are not being addressed legal problems are not being addressed within the legal system, and the fact that there are 5.4 million people, or 18% of Canadians have serious legal problems, and many of those legal problems are not being addressed. So 71% of people with legal problems are not getting any professional guidance or assistance at all. So one of the important factors is everybody perceives that hiring a lawyer is expensive. However, in Ontario, remember, paralegals can assist for certain types of cases. Not every case.
Absolutely. And we get a full caseload many times, and we're busy. And there's certain boards and tribunals that have a huge demand for people, where 95% of the people who are legal representative are paralegals and not lawyers.
Yeah.
So well, that's something to remember.
Yeah. In fact, I was doing a landlord and tenant case against, and the representative on the other side was a lawyer this week, and that is unusual. I think I've done probably over 150 cases now, and probably only ever two of them have been lawyers. This particular individual was very knowledgeable in landlord and tenant matters. The other one was not.
Oh yeah, well, that lawyer also was a former adjudicator too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, this particular
lawyer, I always liked appearing before him when he was doing the board. Very good, and that's good. I always like working with them. Regardless. And many of my peers who also paralegals are pretty good, and you get to know them. You get to know who's representing the other side, and you get to talk. And I enjoy that, because doing it now where we can do it all over Ontario using Zoom, we get to meet people in other parts of the province, who are also working as paralegals or lawyers in this type of case.
Yeah. Okay, so in the Canadian survey shows that 24% of cases of people who contact lawyers, they found the lawyers did not end up helping them, and there are a number of reasons for that. And we were discussing this before the show, and we could think of three off the top of our heads. One, the problem might not be handled through the legal system, i.e. there might well be a political solution or other solutions, or there may not be laws that actually govern this area. Perhaps the lawyer that you contacted doesn't handle that type of thing, and maybe they don't have contacts for people that do. But there's often other people that do handle those sort of things. Yep. And the third category is some are too minor to hire a legal person. And what I mean by that is, for example, you've got a case, Angela, I owe you $3,000. Are you going to hire a paralegal to get the $3,000 off me through the small claims system? Likely not. You're going to actually.
I'm going to go hire Dowlings or something like that to go after you for that $3,000.
Yes, it's going to cost you about $30,000 in order to get me $3,000 I owe you. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
you very. Just handle these things yourself. If it's basic,
very cost effective.
And in fact, as I said, sometimes that we even offer coaching, for a couple of hours of coaching time to assist them to get through all of this stuff. And it's still worth their money, because they can still get your expertise, and then they'll get what they need and be able to enforce it too.
Mind you, I have to say, one of the things I learned in bar school, by the way, was that a small claims court may be small in terms of the money, but it may not be small in terms of the legal issues involved.
Yeah, and these are very important issues. They're all important to the people that have them. Regardless of what the issue is, it's very important to the people who have the issues. Because and this is what we try to do, because people who come into our office, a lot of times they say, well, I don't know whether this is something that you really bother with or not. I always tell them, I said, the issue is important to you. It's obviously affected you enough for you to come into this office to talk to us about it, and we're here
Yeah.
to listen, and we'll talk about what we can do.
And we've had some people who have come into our office. One had, yes, you've got a good claim, but the total value of your claim is where, you know, you're going to be hiring us at probably $3,000, and at the same time you're going, you know, and you're only claiming 2.5.
Yeah.
And where's the point in that?
Yeah, there's no point, and we do tell them that. And we do suggest that, you know, that sometimes we'll write a letter or a demand letter. Sometimes that works. Or if they want to go through and file their own claim through small claims, we can maybe help them, as I said, coaching.
Yeah.
And we don't do the whole claim for them. They do it. Their name is on the claim, everything. And we go through that with them just towards the end, especially if they win the case and they want to enforce it.
All right. Yeah, exactly. You know, enforcement's a whole different beast.
Yeah, could be complicated for a lot of people.
Yeah. And that actually is a stage which we have to talk about with another client this week, actually. So, okay. Perhaps it's not, perhaps the problem that you face is a political problem and not a legal one.
You know what I tell them when that happens? I said, go home, make some signs, and do like put them on a stick or something, make a few of them, and then get your friends to go out and pick it. Like, especially City Hall. Like, City Hall is a great one for that.
Oh, yeah. Do it on City Hall.
Yep.
Do it at City Hall. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Maybe they're building a road too much, or they're discussing bike lanes. Half of you want the bike lanes, half of you don't want the bike lanes. You know, these are all political problems. And that means you have to build community support to try to get your side funded, and you make deputy positions. One time, City Council was proposing licensing all the cats in the city of St. Catharines. Okay, so everybody who owned a cat had to pay a licensing fee for each one of them every year. So I went up there and I made a presentation about how practical that was going to be and whether we should put some tax dollars towards that. and how much it'll be, and how can you prove that people have cats, and are they going to go door to door and do a head count, or how are they going to do this? Like, it was really good. I had the head of the Humane Society with me. He agreed with me, you know.
Yeah, and then of course what happens is my next door neighbor spots that I have cats. And then they report me to the city. The bylaw officer comes around and looks throughout my house, up and down, and whatever, and says, "You haven't got any cats?" And I said, "Yeah, they died last year." Okay, so going back to an important question that Robert's asking. So, is there a cost to coaching? Yes, there is. We normally will actually
we will talk to the person about the cost and what kind of coaching they need, how long they need to be coached for. There are people I do who need help starting their business, who help doing cases, who are also paralegals, but they may not have handled any cases. I also do that with them too. Okay? There is a charge, depending on how much they have. Through the Coach and Advisor Network, they get a couple of freebies. For the first couple of times, I do a few freebies for them just to make sure they understand how I do it and how well I can do it for them, and whether we're a good match. And then if we are and the person wants more, then we can talk a little bit about how much that would be. And we try to be reasonable with respect to the perspective of the problem that they are trying to work on. And so there's a lot of different things that we can help people with. Oh, I come from Saskatchewan. Well, we can pick a rock, light a fire to burn. So different here. Well, we're not even allowed to light a fire during the summertime unless you're cooking something. So I always tell people to bring the token hot dogs or the token burgers. Especially if the fire department comes around.
I've got the barbecue. I've got the barbecue ready. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, you know, I'm not going to be cooking anything other than on a barbecue, right?
Yep.
Or on my home cooker, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah, and the thing is that I'm also mindful that there are many political problems out there, and as much as we might wish them to be resolved, and they are not so easy to resolve. For example, do you want a traffic light down the end of your road? Yeah, you're going to have to go speak to city council, and then
Get a
you're gonna have
petition.
to, yeah, you're probably going to have to get a report done and commission a report.
Yeah,
All
and
right?
get a traffic
Yeah,
study done and get a
exactly.
petition.
Yeah, and get
Yeah,
a
so I mean,
petition.
there's a lot of different things that go into this. That's what your city council is for and your city staff is for. And even calling them up and saying, how do I do this?
Yeah,
And they're very helpful to people.
yeah,
If you
exactly, and
want to
that's
have something like that
yeah,
done.
yeah, exactly, and that's the sort of thing that is, and it doesn't matter what we use the example of City Hall, but the same would be true
Could
sometimes
be the
when you've
same
got
with the
them
province or the
provincial
federal
issue.
government because
Yeah,
they all got their different
yeah.
jurisdictions. Hey?
Walk up to Queen's Park, go go stand in the lobby there and approach one of the MPPs and say, "Hey, I've got a problem with whatever your problem is." Off
I don't know how Doug Ford is going to build a tunnel under Highway 401. And I don't know how Doug Ford is going to be forcing every city and small town across Ontario to get rid of all their bike lanes and only get them when they have to seek permission from the province of
Oh,
Ontario.
actually, I know what the tunnel under the 401 is for.
But
It's the notwithstanding homeless encampment.
oh yeah, remember they got to do that notwithstanding clause. That's something I definitely am going to be writing about because I have some strong feelings about that because that's another thing where they're taking away from the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they have to be very, very careful when they do these things.
And actually, I note, by the way, that our local mayor here in St. Catharines, Matt Cisco, is one of the
And the
18 mayors
signatories,
who
yeah, he's
requested.
one of the signatories on that letter that went in.
And by the way, to his credit, at the moment, Jim Diodati is not one said mayor.
Yeah, same as the Hamilton mayor, and Olivia Chow isn't either.
And actually, it's significant that Hamilton and Toronto are not. And I think that there would be a lot more pressure on Doug Ford to change the rules if there was Hamilton and Toronto backing that change.
Yeah.
I can't see Olivia Chow or the mayor of Hamilton doing that. I'm sorry. I'm the mayor of Hamilton.
Because this is a political issue, I always feel that you're trying to divert yourself away from solving the housing crisis.
Yeah.
So you want to get into these other little things, that, yeah, serious issues, of course, and concerns, of course. But let's try to solve the homeless issue, the housing crisis. And then maybe some of these other issues will start disappearing with it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the next statistic: 41% of people who contact lawyers only help with part of their problem. And of course, there's a number of reasons for that. We spitballed a few around beforehand. Here, a resolution is sometimes a mix of a legal and non-legal issue. Maybe, for example, if you need to change, if you need a variance to resolve your a bylaw issue in it for your local, for something you're building. Part of that is legal. Part of that is actually about a building, is about planning type activities.
Yeah, these are things that, where this is where, yeah, and a lot of these things go like that. Even stuff when you're looking at provincial stuff,
Yeah, thank you.
I'm trying to
Thank
make,
you,
say, an appeal to the Social Benefits Tribunal on behalf of a client who has a huge overpayment, and we're appealing the overpayment. Even if I completely win the overpayment battle, I'm not solving the whole problem because the OW or ODSP rate is still too low for that person to survive on. Okay,
Okay,
it's more of a political problem.
just as a note, Robert has basically answered my my drawing a blank. Andrea Horvath is the mayor of.
Yeah, Deborah.
Yeah,
Yeah, she was.
I knew that. I just forgot it. Completely forgotten it.
Yeah.
Also, Betty raises, even though I was a homeowner back there, my hubby worked for the city. I could not cut the tree in front of my house.
Can't do it here either.
Yeah.
They got to save the trees, and you have to get permission to cut it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and these are a lot of things that a lot of people don't realize. You know, I've known somebody, I had to defend them a long time ago. He cut a whole bunch of trees on his property, and it was clearly his property. And then he got in trouble for it. And he said, "Why do I get in trouble for cutting trees on my property?"
Well, sometimes you can
settled it out. You know, we settled it out, but people have to realize that there are issues.
Yeah.
Okay? And sometimes the trees really are dying. They're dead, or they're infected.
I was going to say, you could cut the tree on the front of your property if the city agrees that the tree is dead.
Yeah, because some of them are infested by these bugs. Lamplighter bugs.
Well, we had a tree. I had a tree situation. I think these ash trees that were probably something like 70% of all ash trees in Ontario died of some bug, and we had two in our garden. I'm thankful they were gone because they were a nuisance anyway.
Yeah, but this guy was cutting healthy trees.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right? Because he just wanted to clear his backyard.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can maybe cut them down, but get permission from the city first. Right?
Yeah. Again, you can get a permit if it's infected or sick.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing. You can get a permit, and sometimes you don't need a permit when it's infected or sick, because sometimes you'll actually have a safety notice handed to you by the city.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you have to be careful of the stumps too of your trees, because if they go too close to your house, that's another reason you may want to have them taken out. Because if the roots grow too close to their house, they can cause kinds of problems with your foundation.
Yeah.
So there are issues there too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so here's another statistic for you. 42% of people believe they can achieve a fair resolution to their problems without a lawyer's assistance.
They calling somebody that may be finding a solution that may be less than legal?
Well, yeah, we're not necessarily. Hey,
we don't endorse that.
Mr. Capone, I need
Al Capone, yes.
Your neighbor.
Yes, or yeah.
And he says, yes, Miss Browne, of course I can help you with your neighbor problem.
Yeah, because a lot of people do that. And in the modern day type of society, we see a lot of that, where a lot of landlords are just getting fed up with the landlord and tenant board, where they've waited 8 months and they've got no rent from their client all this time. And now they're saying, okay, now it's time for me to fish or cut bait. So they go change the locks, throw the tenant stuff out on the property, and hey, problem solved. Tenant's gone. But they're building longer term problems that way.
Yeah.
Because the tenant can sue you, find a whole lot of stuff.
It's easy for us to joke about that being a way, about Mr. Capone being the easy solution. But in fact, actually, as you said, that often can provide more
complex problems in the long run. And it's best that if you're not sure, talk to legal counsel about anything you have. If you're frustrated about the landlord-tenant board, write to your MPP and say, look, the board is still taking too damn long. Seems the more adjudicators you hire, the longer it takes.
But again, one of the things to think about with that is that nowadays we have access to things like psychotherapy, mediation, and other services that might well be able to help resolve problems like
and these are also legal issues where people can actually sometimes, especially psychotherapy, mediation, especially areas like it's say family law or disputes. These things can be resolved.
There's community groups now that can help resolve community issues.
Yeah, they have that. And then there's like cooperative, like they do some things through Cooperative Housing Federation, where they used to come down and help people deal with neighbor issues. And they're trained mediators that do this. So there's a lot of stuff that's outside the legal system, still legal, but still help people resolve problems.
Well, and actually, it's worthwhile talking about a mediator for a little while. If you hire a mediator, many paralegals or lawyers are also mediators.
Yep, we have a mediator on staff.
Not all mediators are lawyers or paralegals.
Yep.
Many mediators are not legally trained, but most good mediators have training in mediation. Now, mediation itself tends to lead to an agreement, and that agreement is in the form of a contract. So that mediation contract results in something that both parties will agree to do. You know, I will agree to mow your lawn every month, all right, once a month, every month on a Sunday, all right. And you'll agree to moving the bikes from my half of the driveway and make sure that they never left on my half of the driveway. Those types of agreement.
Yeah,
right?
and these things people never go to court about.
Yeah.
But they go through the mediator, where the mediator just listens to both sides. They do not provide legal advice. They do not practice law when they're doing this, but they do give people advice to they kind of get ideas from each side about what they would like to see as a result of their visit that day.
Yeah.
Okay?
And the whole point about a lot of these is you're resolving legal problems outside of the law courts. And believe me, the law courts are actually grateful that you are.
Yeah, exactly. It saves you a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of aggravation. And after the mediation is over, you can still be friends. Okay?
Well,
many times, like after law courts and fighting and everything and lawsuits, and even because there's always a winner and a loser, and sometimes it's very hard to be friends again.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, that's an important point, is that through mediation, through through things like psychotherapy, there are options there where people might not lose. You might not be a lose-lose situation. You can be a win-win situation if the parties are prepared to work together.
Yeah,
right?
marriage therapy, where the couples are quarreling and fighting and wanting to divorce and so forth, and then just split, take off. Then after they have a proper psychotherapy, a very excellent therapist, then they kind of let them look at the issues, and they help them both see where they could improve things within that relationship.
Yeah, and it puts them back on a track that they're both willing to go. I was going to say right path, but that's not necessarily the right path. Right, the right path according to what they wish to do.
Yeah,
right?
Everybody has a right path that's different for them.
Yeah.
Right?
And your right path might be different to my right path, and I couldn't follow your right path.
But the couple concerned would have to determine what works best for them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So these are very things that are alternative to the legal system, rather than going through long and expensive family court fights.
And again, people have their reasons for not contacting a lawyer, even when services are accessible and they can afford it. It was actually interesting. I took over a case midpoint through it that was a small claims case, and the gentleman didn't have any problem paying. He paid his own case, and then he decided to take on a paralegal and get some legal advice, because what happened is the judge basically said, well, you need to get some legal advice as to whether your case can go forward. Right? And
I've heard it said to the other party a lot of times, and there's self-reps, I'll raise an issue, a legal issue, at a hearing, and the other person would say, no, I think I can do this. And then the adjudicator or the judge says, they won't say that I'm correct, but I know that she is saying this or he is saying this. He said, but if I were you, he says, Angela has a good point. I would talk to a legal representative, if you wish to still pursue this, and then have your legal representative talk to Angela and see if it could be settled or if you just have to withdraw it, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, this happens a lot because I've had cases like that where I've filed very strong defenses that were basically destroyed the case.
Well, for example, if you're suing, you know, so you slip and fall on the RBC steps and you decide, hey, I'm going to sue RBC and I'm going to do it myself. All right. Now, RBC now have lawyers come up and these lawyers, you know, some of which might well be famous name lawyers who you've kind of heard of in the Superior Court. And now, of course, you're sitting there, oh, how am I going to see it? Right? Well,
Yeah.
that's part of the reason why big corporations hire big lawyers. They can afford to do so. So your claim, they've just spent more on lawyer fees than your claim is even worth, right? And where's the economics in that, you might actually say? Well, the economics in that is because they're not going to lose.
Yeah, exactly. Because they know, like for example, if they know that they did not do anything or they did not fall substandard with whatever they're doing, they have a maintenance plan, have met certain standards of their, I guess, the sidewalk or whatever it is in front of their place, and that sort of thing, and that it's going to be very difficult to do this, to for that person to prove that there is negligence. And in fact, even gross.
And in fact, even that the negligence falls on the part of the person you're suing in this particular example.
And also whether you're suing the right party.
Yeah,
Many times you're not suing the right party.
Yeah, and in fact, actually, the steps on the outskirts of the RBC are not part of the RBC property, and you're not suing RBC. You should be suing the
Ryokan.
The owners of the mall.
Yeah, and this happens very, very frequently where people say, "Oh, I don't know, who do I sue for this?" Or it could be in a parking lot, could be on the steps of a mall. It could be on somebody's sidewalk in front of their house, or it could be on the person's property as you're trying to go up there to deliver something to that person. There's a lot of different ways that you have to determine who would you try to approach to sue. And this is why it's very important if something like that happens to you to contact a legal person. They will help you determine if you're barking up the wrong tree or not.
Yeah, and better that than to suddenly be facing some highbrow lawyer representing RBC, who kind of states in very authoritative voice, "You have no case, Mr. Jones."
Yep, and then ask for costs.
Yeah, and I'm sorry. Not only do you have no case, you owe the bank $15,000.
Yep, and that could happen. So this is why it's also very careful. We do a lot of different things, and I just finished up settling up a slip and fall, and I just managed to finally come up to the conclusion of it. I've just got some loose ends to tie on it, and then finally I can give my client his check after he signs off. But we had to be very careful about who was responsible for suing. And then when we pursued that, we learned that there was another party that was a subcontractor to the original party that we sued. And they gave me that, but didn't tell me where to go there. But I had to do a search to find out where they were, and I did. And you just sue both of them. They come to the table, to make sure that they both know that something happened and that they have a right to defend themselves. And then at the end of the day, we ended up settling.
Yeah. Okay, so some people use self-help mechanisms, not all of which are legal. We talked about the Al Capone method before. Hey, Al, I've got a problem.
Or locking tenants out of their place after you throw their furniture out on the front lawn.
And there was a prime example of that a couple of years back in Hamilton, right? Essentially, yes, it got the tenants out. They were gone, but it didn't stop the landlord from having a fight in the landlord and tenant board.
Yeah, and it was a major fight.
Yeah.
And it costed the landlord a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And and he also got fined by the board. And if he doesn't pay the fine by the board, the landlord cannot file any further applications to the board till
Which
that
means
fine
you
is paid.
can't evict anybody for non-payment of rent.
Yeah, which means that somebody could stay in his unit and not pay rent for years, and he can't file an application. So these things have to be. You have you have a lot of things you have to be concerned about when this happens.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and self-help mechanisms. There are many self-help mechanisms out there, many of which are legal, and you've got community groups that actually run self-help clinics, and to enable people to navigate legal systems or quasi-legal systems or even non-legal systems, in order to get their things across. But and we joke about it, our friend Al Capone, but that's not the way to be going, right?
Like there's a group called the National Association of Self-Represented Litigants,
Yes.
which is run out of the University of Windsor.
Yeah.
And what they do is they work with people who have gone through self-representation, and they try to set up different people, paralegals and lawyers, to assist people to coach people who are self-represented litigants. Okay, like you can charge a fee for it, but they would not be paying like full representation. And then there's other groups like Justice Net. They people can give some advice, Pro Bono Ontario. And then there's groups like the Landlord Self-Help Center, which is
Yeah.
an interesting
Yeah.
one, which is a legal clinic that specializes in helping small landlords. And they help there. And there's a solo group for landlords, which they're more of a political action group, but they do give each other tips on how to work their way through the board if they're going solo.
Okay, so what in relation to that, some other people choose not to pursue or resolve their legal problems at all. And part of this is that there was actually one example we had today where a person came into our office. They were told by some other people that they'd seen, there's no resolution for your problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right, when in fact there was. Okay.
Yeah, or I hear from people, oh, well, you were only employed at that organization for a month, but I don't know if we can help you because that you weren't employed there long enough. In some cases, you could actually sue under that. Like there was a case where a person was working for a company for 8 days, and there were human rights violations, and he won $85,000.
Yeah. Yeah, and remember, your case might not necessarily be like that. So
yeah,
you might only be deserving of $5,000, but $5,000.
Every case is different, and that's why you need to talk to people like us, and we can tell you if there is anything in it that could be applicable in that type of situation, or whether you have what I call a traditional wrongful termination type case. So there are a lot of differences there.
Robert points out another factor which we didn't talk about, which was pro bono organizations. And there are, and also legal clinics that may well be able to help you with your problem.
Legal clinics, they help certain things. Like if you're a tenant and you're on a low income, usually welfare, ODSP, or just old age security, and you don't have any room to pay for anybody outside of it, they may help you with certain things. And many times they provide summary legal advice. And sometimes they will help with getting you onto ODSP in the beginning. A lot of us help people with ODSP problems too. I do too. But legal clinics also do. And they don't provide any charge. But
so
some people have told me they take a long time to get a hold of or whatever. But there's good legal clinics, there's not so good legal clinics. So just like there's good lawyers or not so good lawyers,
Yeah.
It depends on what they are. Sometimes you're just very busy. I just suspect they're just being over busy. That's not because of lack of capacity.
And I suspect that where you are is, by the way, for example, if you're in a trade union, maybe your union will put some some portion of your legal costs.
Yep.
All of these actually help, the would-be litigant. So,
Like
yes,
if your trade union wants to help you with your legal costs and you say, hey, we met this people down the street, Invictus Legal, I would like them to help me. And then we can work with your union to ensure
yeah,
that we give you legal services.
yeah.
Landlords have insurance programs that they can sign up for. And part of that could pay for legal fees. So
Oh,
there's a lot
absolutely.
of different avenues where legal fees could be covered.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Perhaps perhaps they choose to go on Facebook and bitch about it.
Yeah, that solves everything.
Yeah, I think that's it. That's the world's problem solved
Yeah.
in a
And
nutshell.
it goes viral. Boy, oh boy.
52,912 people watched my post. Beat that, Angela.
Let's just bitch about anything. And then, of course, you got to be careful. Going on Facebook to bitch about something, can also line you up in a libel suit. So be careful with that, too.
That's a possibility as well. Yeah, I know. Okay, so back to that survey, 1 million people have expressed the wish for more legal help to be available in Canada. Right, and there has been I've read a few legal journals and academic papers that say there needs to be a greater access to justice, and this has been an ongoing theme in academia since probably the mid 90s, maybe even earlier. But it's not just a theme here in Canada. It's the same theme you can see repeated in the US.
Everywhere,
In
everywhere.
the UK, you can see it in Australia, you can see it in France, you can see it in Germany. That's a repetition of the same theme pretty well everywhere.
But Ontario started with the only thing that started, and other people are taking it up, licensing paralegals.
And that's dear to your heart, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. So I was part of that.
Yeah. Okay, so as I said, not all solutions we perceive have legal avenues, and what I mean by that is that, for example, you believe that a junction on your main road doesn't have it requires a light, because in fact actually there's always problems at this junction. So wouldn't it be better if there was a traffic light? Maybe it would. Maybe it might be better if there's a roundabout. But that's a different complex issue as well. The legal avenue that you have there is not that you're going to sue anybody. There's not really that doesn't lead anywhere. The legal avenue might well be to petition your local city.
Yeah. Or even taking up the issues with your neighbors too. Your dog keeps barking and barking and barking. There's ways of solving that. Hey, I've had a situation. Actually, we went to trial for a case of a barking dog, and got barking dog, but nobody can prove it was actually the dog that belonged to my client. Like, this is what I don't understand. You take a barking dog. First of all, they have to prove that the dog belongs to the client, the person that you're the defendant.
Yeah.
But then I also had another case where it was clearly my defendant's dog because it came from that person's house, and they were forced to train the dog, and they also had to pay a fine. So these things, but many times, if the dog barks, I had a neighbor where the dog was barking, and I saw the dog. I had a chance to meet the dog. It was a very friendly dog. There wasn't anything wrong with the dog, but the dog liked to bark, liked to introduce themselves by barking. So I talked to them about it. It was a fresh rescue, and I gave them some suggestions about how to calm down the barking and how to work with the dog and so forth, and they did. And guess what? The only thing I heard from that dog after a bit of them doing that stuff is woof when I came home. That's it. Just woof. And that's what you do. I never took them to court or anything and started any legal action. I just knew that they were struggling with that, and that's what I did. I worked with them on that.
Well, I was going to say, legally, neighbor disputes are probably one of the toughest types of dispute ever, and taking your neighbor to court for $N,000 for a neighbor dispute that actually is worth nothing is often going to lead nowhere, because especially if both neighbors, own their own homes, essentially what you're going to be getting is I'm standing on my edge of the land, and that's how I'm doing it, and this is exactly how my neighbor's doing. I'm standing on my edge of the land as well, and we're facing each other nose to nose to nose.
And they each put up cameras to look at each other's property.
Yeah.
And record each other. It just gets silly as time goes on. Okay. When it gets serious, though, if somebody's trying to hurt someone, okay, then it might be time to perhaps get a peace bond or something. Sometimes that would work, or engage in a community mediation service of some sort. But it's a very, very difficult suit. Like, I've had a couple of them in my time where neighbors wouldn't leave anybody alone.
I think community mediation is something that our cities should do more of.
They should, and they should engage mediators that have it. We have a mediator in our staff who's also a legal representative, but he does mediation, and he's well trained in it. So there are people in law firms that have access to people understaffed, and there's also agencies that that might provide assistance with mediation, maybe specific types of mediation that they do. So these are things that need to be more accessible to people. And there needs to be more awareness of these options.
Okay, so one question here is, one of the things that's obviously been up is that when measuring costs associated with legal problems, a survey reports that 55% of respondents said that the amount they spent on legal services was under $5,000.
Yeah, and not the billions that everybody thinks you spent on lawyers.
And well, what there is, for example, in divorce, it's famous that there's a famous quote out there that a divorce lawyer walks away with more money. The two divorce lawyers walk away with more money than do the two individuals they're representing.
Many cases they do. That's why I've always looked at, when you're dealing with a family law issue, it's always best to try to get as much resolved as possible through mediation and other forms of discussion before you even litigate or put something before a judge.
Yeah. So, but it's important. Let's say that. So, survey reports that 55% of respondents said that their costs were under $5,000. That's pretty significant. That's actually, that belays the question that actually legal services are expensive. And for example, I think the vast majority of the cases we've ever represented on, is, in fact, most people are paying well under $5,000.
Yeah, average maybe $1,500 to $7,500, depending on the type of case. We've had a few cases above that, but these were cases that were very long and very complex. But we don't have very many of them.
I'd say the vast majority of cases that we deal with are probably ranging in the $1,500 to $3,500.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we try not to, as I said at the very beginning, we try not to, we try not to become, we're not becoming zillionaires off the part of everybody who comes in here.
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing is, what we have to do, we still have to make a living. Okay. But at the same time, we also try to be respectful of the proportionality of the issue.
Yeah.
And what we need to put into place for it, the type of work we have to do, our costs of delivering it, as well as what the person's budget is. And we need
Yep.
to talk to the person what they're looking for as an outcome.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
If we have somebody who's going to go to a criminal court for a summary charge, which we can represent on summary charges, for example, but they want to plead not guilty, it's going to cost them more to plead not guilty and go to trial than it would be for us to do a plea bargain. So these are types of discussions we have with people when they come in and talk to us. Okay, and that's okay, because people have a right to have their day in court. And what I always tell people, I said, this is your case. This is not my case. This is your case. You need to tell me. You're driving the bus. You need to tell me where you want me to take you.
Yeah. And in fact, I just sent a letter today to a client where he made a statement about what he believes his situation is. And I said, so to confirm, you need me to do X and Y and Z.
Yep, exactly. I do that too. So if somebody decides that they're going to plead guilty, I always send them a letter, an email. So here I am confirming that you are choosing to plead guilty on the following terms.
Yep.
Especially after I've already hashed it out with the prosecutor, and these are the following terms.
Yep.
And I send it to them, and then they send yes. And then I just go in. Then he doesn't have to show. I could just go there and wrap it up.
Yeah, exactly. And in fact, actually, that keeps the cost down for many of these things.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of different things that we do. Like I've done trials. I've had some people that says, I'm going to court. I want to have my day in court. And I've had them sign paperwork sometimes because I've already told them that you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Okay, but they still want to go to court. And that's okay too, because as I said, they're driving the bus and they need to tell us what they want to do.
Oh yeah. Yep, absolutely. All right. But bear that in mind, not all legal costs mount up to a lot of money. So $5,000 is more than reasonable, I think.
Yeah, I've had costs where people wanted a letter or something and then me to talk to them on the phone for half an hour. And so, I mean, that was usually just about $500, in cost. And it achieved what the person wanted.
Okay.
Now, so there's a lot of things.
Okay, so the other thing important to note about this, which they've identified in that survey, is that they believe the market for legal services in Canada is growing by about 30 or 40%. And probably to be fair, I've seen similar surveys in the UK. I've seen similar surveys in the USA where, the legal market has grown exponentially in the UK, in the USA over the years. So the rest of the world is simply catching up with the US right now.
Yeah, the US had a really nice thing about how everybody's so happy down there, but I think everybody's catching up with them.
Yeah, and there was a time when almost every lawsuit that was settled was in tens of millions of dollars, but now it's not anywhere near that way anymore.
In Canada, we can't. There's a limit to pain and suffering. There's certain types of things that we can't settle for, and certain things like we have a very different system than the U.S. When you get all these jury awards in the U.S. for millions, and in Canada, civil juries are there, but they're not as common.
Well, the other thing about jury report in the US, there was a jury about 3 or 4 years ago that gave out an award that was like 10 to 15 million or something for a certain small class of people. And the judge said, yeah, that award is unrealistic. In reality, I'm going to award something in the region of 5,000 per litigant.
Yep.
That type of thing. So
even the lady who spilt hot coffee on her lap and got burns and everything from it. What was that, from a McDonald's or something?
Yeah, I think
McDonald's
like that. Yeah.
Hey, and then everybody said she had $3.5 million. What happened is that went up to an upper court judge. And even though the jury awarded that much, but the upper court judge awarded her a more reasonable sum. I forget what it was. It was something like $300,000 or $400,000.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, exactly. A lot more reasonable.
Just more medical bills and different things. Yeah.
Yeah, it was to cover reasonable medical expenses and the like. I remember that particular case as well. And that was exactly the same as the other one that I saw. It was, they were awarded millions, but the upper court in the state basically said, no, there's no millions on offer here.
Yeah. So people who think that they're going to make millions by filing for dollars, okay, they have to know that it's a lot more difficult than they think.
Yeah. US claims have come down, whereas other claims have grown.
Yeah. We're looking at a lot of things that have gone up, like our breach of privacy cases started at 20,000 limit. Now they're moving into higher levels, depending on the types of damages.
Okay, so the range of services and pricing structures that are vital to people, but will the costs be changing overall? There's been talk. I've got about 6 or 7 different models on the board in front of me about how we might pay for legal services, as well as hourly rates, subscription rates, contingency payments, past paid, the normal retainer, and a few others like that. And those things are around and we can utilize them, but essentially, does it change the actual amount, the value of the cost, of the legal person's work?
Yeah, it really depends. It depends on what you're doing. Like some cases, I will say, are quite worthwhile taking on a flat rate, because I know where it's going to start, I know where it's going to end, and I know what results will come out of it. Okay, fine. That person knows they're not going to pay more than X number of dollars. Okay, for this case.
Yeah.
And then there's other cases where there's what we call a staged retainer, where, okay, to write the claim, it's going to cost this much. To serve the claim, it's going to cost that much. To go to a settlement conference, it'll cost this much. So as we go along, they know, so that they're not going to feel that we're going to end in thousands and thousands of dollars. So things like that could also be structured.
And in some respects, some of those kinds of things, they say, oh, the serving the claim is going to cost you $150. $150? I can run it round. It's a 5-minute walk from my house. Give it to me, right? And you instruct them how to do it, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't.
A lot of times it doesn't.
A lot of times it doesn't, and there's a reason why it doesn't, because a service agent has a way to, hey, I've served a couple of people, as you know. Not a thing, I kind of gave it to the gentleman, and he said, what's this? And I said, I don't know. I was told to give it to you. And walked away.
Yes. See, it's a process server. They know how to get the attention of the person who is being sued. Right? And they say, hello, are you Jack Jones? I said, yeah. He says, I have something for you. You're served. And then they just walk off. Right? And other people, if you're going to serve your own lawsuit on someone, they see you coming up the driveway, you're suddenly not home.
They know who you are. They know who you are.
Suddenly not home, or you disappear out the back door. So you got to really be careful, this kind of thing. If you want to make sure the person is served properly, there's a lot of rules about how people have to be served. You can't just serve them any old way by throwing it on their front lawn and walk away. It'd be nice to do that, but it's not what's legal. Because people have to have the lawsuit be brought to their attention. So this is why things get done that way, and that's why it costs a certain amount.
And that's exactly why, you see, when we talk to a service agent, it's going to cost a certain amount of money, even though it's like, yes, Mr. Service Agent, I can see your office, and I can see the office of the person you're going to be serving, and you're walking 100 meters across from your office to the other building, and you want me to pay how much? And there's a reason for that, of course. Exactly.
Sometimes they have to make more than one attempt.
Yep.
Sometimes there's a person at the door, even though it is Jack Jones, but they say, I'm not Jack Jones.
Yep.
And then they have to confirm that Jack Jones lives there. And then they do that. And then sometimes you have to do an alternative service. That's legal through the court.
And Robert has put it in pizza boxes.
I've delivered flowers before.
Pardon me?
I've delivered flowers before with a large envelope.
Actually, one of our local process servers told me about the flower trick. He walks up to the door with an envelope and the flowers in his hand, and he's serving a woman. Particularly, it works particularly well with women. And he knocks on the door and he says, "Are you, Joanne Jones?" And she says, "Yes, I am." And she sees the flowers and her eyes pop up and go, "Yippee! Somebody's giving me flowers." And he hands her the service and says, "You've been served." And she says, "What? I thought I was getting flowers." He says, "No, these are from my girlfriend."
Oh my God! Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm sure those guys have got a lot of stories to tell.
Yeah, process servers, that do good work, they can get them most of the time.
Yeah.
Sometimes you still have to go to court to ask them to do it alternative service. I was allowed to serve through Facebook before. I was allowed to serve by email before. I was allowed just to send a letter by regular mail before. As long as I can confirm that that was the correct address.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but things have to be done properly.
And that is why
promotions have to be brought. Courts have to be given permission.
And that's why people have, that's why there are pricing structures in play. As I said, they may be invisible, right across the street from the person to be served. Doesn't make it any cheaper.
Right. And when you have to talk to a judge about something, it costs money every time you have to go talk to a judge.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, so remember also that people experience financial hardships on a number of fronts because of their legal problems. And sometimes they can't afford to fight 3 or 4 battles at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So that might be a reason why they're not entering 3 or 4 battles. And then, of course, so it's like, well, you've got 2 years to claim. So which one am I claiming on? How am I going to claim?
That's like when I know about a claim that something has taken place, I remind them of the time limits that's there. And if they choose to talk to me within the time limits, that's fine. But as long as you inform them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. And the point being is that even if you've got the money, I'd say if you've got 3 or 4 battles to fight, you've got 3 or 4 legal battles that say that your employer dumped you, your wife's divorcing you, you've got,
and your dog loves you, and
you've got somebody owes you $30,000. You got to pick which one of those kind of couple of those battles you might have to choose. Clearly, the wife one has to probably be on that list. Right? Yeah. Which of the other 2 then is a flip of a coin, right?
Yeah, because the wife might like to take the house with her and the car with her and bank accounts with her and everything else.
Yeah, exactly. And she might actually want to take the benefit of the lawsuits with her.
Yeah, exactly. This is how people are. You have to kind of look at that. That's why it's important to talk to someone.
Yeah. And so, the fact, I think that survey kind of did accept that often there are 3 or 4, fights that people have got on their hands, so they can't necessarily afford all 3 or 4 fights to battle at the same time. Right. And hey, sometimes those 3 or 4 battles don't include divorces, by the way.
Yeah.
I use that as an example because that's a particularly
people know divorces. They're familiar with divorces and family courts.
Maybe you've got 2 or 3 lawsuits going on at the same time, and
some people sue for a living. I mean, Christ, people sue for a living.
Well, we do.
Yeah, we sue for a living. That's our profession.
We sue for other people for a living, but that's the way it goes. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for being here. Right. This has been actually quite a long show. We've run over the hour.
Yeah, exactly. We usually only have an hour, or not even an hour usually. But anyways, it was a pleasure to have you with us. We had some good feedback tonight. Yeah. And I encourage people to come in and give us feedback every time we have a show. And also, if you want to hear us talk about something and you have some good ideas, please let us know, what you'd like us to talk about, and then we'll put it in some kind of legal context, or if you've read an article that involves a legal situation, we'll read it too and we'll talk about it. There's a
Yep.
lot of things that this show is about. We're a public interest broadcast. Okay?
Yep.
So we do that.
So if you need to contact Invictus Legal, you can do so on 905-688-5598, or you can contact Angela at weareinvictus.legal, or myself at Peter at weareinvictus.legal, or or look at our website or at https weareinvictus.legal. There you go. And here's Angela's favorite part of the show.
Yep. And what you heard today on Spin Legal, whether this show or in others in our series, is not legal advice. We don't give legal advice in our podcast. Okay, that would be specific to an individual. But if you do need legal advice, or if you really feel that you need to talk to somebody, then please contact a lawyer or a paralegal. We would certainly love you to call Invictus Legal, but do talk to a paralegal or a lawyer, okay, before you go on to do something on your own. Okay, so it'd be a good idea. Okay, and then have a great evening.
And it's been a pleasure having you. And I think we shall say good evening. And well, whatever your next week is holding for you, I wish you well with it.